I'm guessing people now see my screen. I'll take it as a yes from Zoom. I don't know how many times I've asked that question of do people see my screen? And the answer has always infallibly been yes. So we will go on from there. The original session was titled Sales and Purchasing Automation in P21, but I did a sort of last minute call this morning to retitle it slightly, to tie it back to what ultimately is the goal of any type of automation project. Really what distributors are trying to do is drive world-class revenue and margin growth in Profit 21. And automation just happens to be the vector by which businesses can do this. As Cindy said, I am Sam O'Shea. I am the founder and CEO of Recurrency. I'm happy to be sharing about our company today and maybe just some ideas that you can all take back to your own businesses. And to start, I think I'll start with a question, which is a question about one of the most famous stories in technology, the story of the yellow New York taxi cab. The yellow New York taxi cab that in very short time became Uber. And this is a very famous story. Everyone knows the story of Uber. But I think that if you dig deeper, there are actually some lessons that even distributors can learn about how new technology replaces incumbents. If you look at Uber, it wasn't just that it was a better experience. It was both a better experience for customers, delivering exactly what they want, a seamless, fast ride, but it also was taking advantage of very particular changes in technology that were happening at the same time. When Uber first came on the market, it was one of the first moments where smartphones were ubiquitous. It was one of the first moments where GPS got good enough to do individual car level tracking. And it was also during the financial recession of 2008, 2009, when people with cars were probably looking for a little bit of extra cash. And so the question of, what did Uber get right? Uber leveraged changes in technology and environment to better deliver exactly what their customers wanted. And for better or for worse, this is actually a very similar moment that distributors are in. It is a moment of huge technological change and huge environmental change where customers still want very predictable things. And so if we look, it is a time of great change in distribution. Everyone on this Zoom has heard about COVID. Everyone is sick of hearing about COVID. We would probably not be on this Zoom if it was not for COVID. Beyond COVID, new entrants are competing away margins. B2B marketplaces are entering the scene, creating downward pricing pressure. E-commerce is chipping away at existing channels. New product lines are replacing incumbent favorites. Vendors are going direct to consumer. It's harder than ever to hire and retain talent, right? Change is not just on the sales side. Lead times are still long and unpredictable. Freight is still volatile, although it has come down. There might be a rail strike as of this week. Inflation is at all-time highs. Interest rates are going up. And no one can laugh because we're on a Zoom webinar, but ships are getting stuck in canals. But despite all of these changes we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years, there's no reason for us to suspect that it's going to subside anytime soon. So much is changing in the distribution environment. It's the moment where great distribution businesses can take advantage of changes in technology to thrive and get ahead of competition. Another way of putting this is so much is changing. What do we know is not going to change? And what this is it ties back to customers, right? Distribution customers will more or less always want the same things. They will want trustworthy and value additive vendors. They will want broad selection. They will want fast availability, and they will want low prices. It's very hard to think of a scenario in which a distribution customer wants a untrustworthy and unhelpful vendor, a narrow selection, long delivery, or a high price. And so things that distributors can do to essentially invest in these 4 areas will tend to pay off no matter what in sort of environmental changes are afoot. House of the Dragon. I'm not sure I get the reference, Mark Shoemaker, but I'll take it. And so you might be saying, what does this guy know, right? As Cindy said, I grew up in wholesale distribution, right? For Recurrency, distribution is personal. This is a photo of my grandfather and my uncle, although let's pretend for the sake of the beauty of the photos that it's actually my father in a wholesale hardware distribution business in LA in the 1950s. You can actually see the doorknobs of the showroom in the background. And over time, one business became another. And my uncle magically became my dad. No, I couldn't find a photo of my grandfather and my dad, so I stole one of my uncle. But long story short, I grew up in this family business, and not just a single family business, but a family of businesses, my uncle's business and my dad's business. And I saw that both of them were facing some of the same challenges when it came to operations. And I started introducing what I called analytics and automations into my family business as ways to help solve these problems. Analytics refers to this sort of set of technology about using the data that's already in your ERP, about building better reporting, better KPIs. It's about building great intelligence about the business, and ultimately using the business to predict the business's data to predict forward and make an active recommendation about the future. And so I built all of these analytics tools, taking data, turning them into reports, turning them into recommendations. And slowly that became an automations workflow where it talked about integrating that data with the ERP, making it easy for people to use, creating shortcuts, creating notifications to pull people's attention to the right place at the right time. I'll be taking the next 30 minutes to talk through all of these, analytics and automations, but these are the worlds that they play in. One is using data to generate insight, and the other is turning that insight into action that you can then go out into the world and ideally improve a customer's experience or improve the business with. So as I said, analytics, this is the turning of data into insights. If you look at anyone's P21 database on this call, there is just endless data, right? Thousands and thousands of columns, but so little of it is actually used to generate insight for the business. Much of it is just purely transactional. And so many people on this call might have a reporting solution. Reporting is a very good view of what happened in the past, right? It's a readout of things that have passed. But analytics is using that data to really make a prediction of something that will happen in the future, an insight about the business of where the hockey puck is going rather than where it's been. And automations, again, turns that insight into action. I sort of think about the idea of if you have a great idea, if you have an insight without an action attached to it, you're just forever at the ready, aiming your gun. And if you have an action without insight, you're just shooting all over the place and you'll never hit the target. But only if you couple very easy action with very tight insight do you actually get to hit the target. And if you think about it, ERP and distribution is the perfect coupling for analytics and automations. Because what is ERP? What is Profit 21? Profit 21 is a data and workflow machine. It is a UI that you can do workflows in, you can create quotes, you can create orders, and it is the database that then stores that data in a very high data integrity way. And ultimately layering analytics on top of data and automations on top of workflows creates this magic. We sometimes call this supercharging your ERP. And today I'll be talking about some of the ways in which you can supercharge your ERP. So why should distributors invest in analytics and automations? Because this is the route to leveraging change in the ecosystem to prioritize your customers and get ahead of competition. And so here are our 4 use cases. One of the great automations and insights that you can generate is turning one-off transactions into repeat customers. For most of the people on the call, their customer base looks like this. You have your top accounts, 15 or 20%, and then you have everyone else, this long tail of accounts. For your top accounts, they're doing great. They have seasoned sales reps, they get maximum attention, they attain as close to the maximum possible revenue that you can from them. These are the people that your business, just wakes up in the morning and thinks about because they're your best customer. But that long tail of 80% customers are being left behind. There's a significantly higher volume of accounts per rep. They're typically getting less experience, lower performing teams. They have new hires that are just learning them. And ultimately, because they aren't a larger part of the revenue, because they aren't larger customers, salespeople tend to fall back into this reactive mode where you don't really contact them, but if they call you, great, you'll respond, but you're not proactively out there growing this account into a larger and larger account. And so what is needed to fix this? Well, this is a problem that can very easily be solved with technology. If you can automatically analyze every customer and predict when they might have upcoming demand for an item, and then provide a daily coaching and automation, if you will, on top of that account to highlight who to call, when to call them, and exactly what products to discuss, you as a business can train your sales team to be more proactive for the long tail of customers. And so here, this predict what upcoming demand is. This is an insight. Provide daily coaching. This is an automation. And so I'll actually show a quick little demo here of what we call predictive order automation. So this is what we call opportunities. This is a list of customers, of tenants, or of accounts and ship tos that are likely to reorder a particular item at any time. This list constantly updates every week, and it's tailored for sales reps, so they only see customers that are relevant for them. On top of that, on the right-hand side, you'll see if you pick a ship to, it will actually give specific items that that customer is likely to buy. You can select which ones are good recommendations or not, and you can turn that into a quote in an order in a couple of clicks. Absolutely seamless. So from that insight saying this is a customer who orders an item the first day of every quarter, and it's the 30th, the last day of the quarter, perhaps you should call them about tomorrow preemptively. From that insight to generating a quote in 5 or 6 clicks. Very streamlined. Now, if we go back a little bit, one of the great things about Recurrency is we not only give you a recommendation, but we also tell you why we think it's a good recommendation. So here we have these 3 tabs. We have cadence, usage, and seasonal. These represent 3 modes of reorders. One is cadence. That's what I was saying before. Say they order the first day of every quarter. They order on a cadence. They have you on a vendor review cycle. It's not that hard to figure out what your customer's vendor review cycle is of you, and to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward when that vendor review cycle comes up. The next one is usage, right? They use an item and then they buy it when they're out. If they buy 100 and then a month later buy 200 and then 2 months later buy 100, you can guess that in a month from now, they'll probably use that 100 because they seem to be using 100 per month, and they're likely to reorder. And then lastly, there's seasonal. Right? There are businesses that are just seasonal. There are items that just are seasonal. And if you call and try and pound the pavement just before the season hits, you'll likely find a lot of success. So that's predictive order automation. The next one is how can you turn inbound teams into profit centers with upselling? If opportunities is selling an item again and again and again, and turning a one-off transactional customer relationship into what looks more like a subscription, right? Upselling is how can we sell an item that a customer has never bought before for the first time. And so if you look at any distribution business, if you're walking the floor of a call center or a CSR team, this is what inbound typically looks like. There's an inbound call. There are cheat sheets everywhere. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the many cheat sheets, the Post-it notes, the frequently used customer ID codes because the search in Profit 21 is hard to use. Right? They use these cheat sheets. They have this very slow search process. You have a slow computer. You tend to have a lack of product knowledge many times, especially if someone is new. It can take up to 18 months to train someone on a full product catalog. And ultimately, the experience that a customer has of having intent and calling your business, and they go through this, it sort of wastes that intent, right? Many times the customer will get off the phone without actually having a quote or an order placed because the computer is slow, quote and order is slow, they can't find the item you're talking about. And so they say, let me call you back. Can I get your email? This is what I call wasted intent. And so if you think, how do the best businesses in the world handle upselling? This is probably what the best upselling in the world looks like, right? It's just Amazon. If you go on a business trip and you forget your toothbrush, or if you need a new toothbrush and you go to look at new toothbrushes, or in this case, new toothpaste, they'll have the section right there at the bottom that is frequently bought together, where we'll not only recommend the toothpaste, but toothbrushes and flossers, right? Perfect. It's right there on the page. It's highly, highly tailored to what you're doing. And ultimately, if you look at Amazon's reports, 28% of Amazon's revenue is attributable to these recommendations. Literally, 1/4 of their worldwide e-commerce revenue is due to these recommendations. It's that powerful of a tool if used correctly. And so ultimately, what does like the dream distribution inbound motion look like, right? You get an inbound call, you have instant search, you can find anything you're looking for, the customer, the item, they ship to, the old order in 2 seconds at the most, right? You have a sort of CRM customer 360 that gives the person on the phone all the context they need to know about the person calling them and the customer they're calling them from. And ultimately, it gives you that insight. It gives you that AI recommendation of saying, these are items that this customer has never bought before, but probably would. Try pitching these 3 items. And from there, it would give you a one-click workflow to boost intent rather than waste it. And so here, I can do a quick little video demo of what upselling looks like. So imagine we're going through a quote here. Here's this customer, Green Valley. If we look on the side here, we have a list of items with a match percentage that this customer has never bought before, but probably would. So imagine you're on the phone saying, oh, would you be interested in this particular item, 030010? You get the item description, you get line notes, and from there, you can add to cart with just one click. Absolutely seamless. That's upselling. Now on the sales side, these are two massively powerful levers to make sure you're getting the most out of your customer accounts with upselling, and to make sure you're not losing any customer accounts with opportunities. To summarize these in 2 points, what does this do for distributors? 1, stop losing customers to competitors. And then 2, stop sharing customers with competitors. Many of the customers that we have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of SKUs, but many of their customers are only ordering 5 to 10. And so you think if they are ordering 5 to 10 SKUs, is there an 11th? Is there a 12th? Is there a 20th that they'd probably order if they knew that you sold it? You quoted them an attractive price, you were proactive about it, and you helped them run their business by purchasing through yours. That leads us to the purchasing half. Purchasing can really be 2 things. There's demand planning, there's forecasting, and then there's true purchasing operations. So we'll talk a little bit about both. The next big insight and automation trick is around forecasting. We often say at Recurrency, forecast like your business depends on it, because it literally does. Forecasting in the past was never easy, and it's significantly harder now. Before COVID, lead times were still not short. They were still weeks, but now they're significantly longer. They're months, and they're highly, highly variable. Freight wasn't cheap. Now it's more expensive, although it's come down significantly. And demand was predictable, but now it is more volatile. What forecasters and distribution businesses are finding is that we are living in a time where the data from years past is no longer reflective of years future. And so how do we get around this high variance factor that has now been added to almost every input into the forecasting equation? And if you look, this is a very important problem to solve, because bad forecasting at every level of the business creates downstream effects that affect revenue growth and profitability. If you have better location forecasting, you'll add dollars directly to the net profit of the business by reducing interbranch freight. It will sort of remove culture issues from companies by removing inter-rep competition. It will optimize the transfers process. If you have better vendor-based forecasting, you can better consolidate your containers and negotiate better cost. And ultimately, if you have better order type forecasting, you can balance your direct ships and special orders without having to take on all of that inventory. And if you think, some of the leading distributors in the world are investing massively in doing this, in just forecasting, right? Forecasting at the end of the day is one of these analytics. It is one of these data science activities. And if you look at Grainger, Grainger has 253 open job requisitions for data science and data analysis. So 253 data jobs open. That's not 253 people working on data. That's 253 open roles. So this is very clearly a large problem that the best in the world are investing massively in solving. And so for the sort of small or mid-market distribution business, what is the ideal forecasting system? The first is that it helps build a very granular and accurate view of usage, right? Everything starts with usage. It's a deceptively simple topic, because if you think about usage, if you're looking at your historical sales data, even in P21, is this attributed to the ship to? Is it attributed to the ship to location, to the source location, to the ship location? What about to the location that it should have gone to if a back order or transfer occurred? Is it the DC, right? There's a very deceptively complicated activity in P21, which is building your usage. From usage, you can translate that via forecasting logic into very accurate demand. In P21, even with advanced demand forecasting, you are at best dropping your points onto a graph and drawing a straight or marginally curved line, right? We have a great webinar on P21 advanced forecasting that we did for the Worldwide Users Group. If anyone emails me after this, I'm happy to share the recording. And from there, it takes that the forecast and it adds all the post-processing logic. It converts the demand into the parameters, into your reorder points and your economic order quantities, into your mins and your maxes and your maximum months of stock and your safety stocks and all of that. And from there, the ideal forecasting system would give you a great workflow, would just in a couple of clicks help you export that data and those decisions to Profit 21. no need to do it in spreadsheets. And as you might guess, this ideal forecasting system is Recurrency. This is what we built as a purchasing product to help distribution businesses. We help you meticulously calculate usage. We help you meticulously convert that usage into very accurate forecasts. As I'll talk about later, we actually do a forecast bake-off for anyone who's interested. We auto-test and auto-select all of those parameters in your post-processing logic. We even help forecast stuff like lead time to help you really understand your needs. And ultimately, we help automatically export this data back to Porg so that it's a seamless experience for users. And not only do we do all of this work on the data side, because even just generating that information, your purchasing parameters and your purchasing requirements, this is still just insight. This is something that you should be doing. But we also help you perfect the purchasing process, right? If you look at the average distribution business and you say, how are you doing on purchasing? They say, yeah, we're doing okay. You say, well, how's your inventory? And they say, oh, well, we're up 30 or 40% this year. Stockouts are more common than ever, though, and inventory turns have dropped through the floor. It's a very hard picture to put together. And so ultimately, it comes to the idea that even if you have great purchasing insight, it's very important to translate that into great purchasing operations and great purchasing action, lest nothing ever really happens. And so today, if you look how our purchasing operations really run in one of these businesses, you export your spreadsheet forecast, you go to sales and marketing, you sort of mess around in the spreadsheet a little bit, you triple check the values, you upload to P21, you take these sort of rote lead times out of the system that tend to not be accurate. And from there, you run Porg. And after talking to hundreds of distributors running Profit 21, of one recurrent theme is it seems that no one really trusts Porg. And if you think, what would be the best approach to forecasting, right? It would not be some crazy complicated system, right? It would be something that looks like Porg, but where the mins and the maxes or the up tos or those purchasing parameters are very frequently updated with extremely detailed adjustments. This is what analysis of the top distributors in the world has shown, is that you don't need anything complicated. It's that if you could only trust the data that came out of Porg, it would work amazingly. And so this is what Recurrency has built, right? We have built the insight engine that helps drive trust in Porg. And so what does great purchasing look like with Recurrency? With forecasts, you have these highly accurate, updated daily or weekly multi-month forecasts. You have this great replenishment logic that is updated instantly, sort of in the background for you. We give you purchasing insights at the right time, at the right quantity. We send you notifications and say, hey, these are 4 items that you should probably be looking at right now. And then ultimately, we free up time with a very streamlined purchasing process so that purchasing and buyers can then go dedicate their time for strategic planning and negotiation with vendors. And so as I did for the first 2, I have a quick little purchasing demo. So we start with this notification, right? 2 items need their Porg parameters updated based on a demand forecast. Here, we can look at all of the items. We can apply very accurate filters, and we'll actually give recommendations on what the min and the max should be. We'll give a forecast of the lead time, of the inventory turns. We'll give some fill rate analytics, and ultimately, we'll drive the exact formula of how to calculate these very granular parameters in P21. And we give you just a single checkbox to export to spreadsheets or to export to Profit 21 directly. I don't want to take all the time in the world on the demo. I'm happy to dive deeper if anyone has any questions in the chat. But now, if we zoom out all the way, I've been talking for 20 minutes on these analytics and automations, which boil down to 1, stop losing customers year on year, retain your customers, make sure that your sales reps are able to be proactive in moments of demand rather than totally reactive. Because if you wait long enough for a customer to call you, you have also waited long enough for them to call your competitors and quote out your price. The next one is on upselling. Whenever you have a moment of intent with a customer, add that extra line item, right? Push for just that extra sale, because the average distributor is hundreds of thousands of orders per year, and just adding 1 or 2 line items can make a very material difference in the business. And then lastly, make sure you have a robust forecasting system Make sure you're using the data that customers have already given you about their demand patterns to make really great predictions about what that will be in the future, and make sure that forecasting is integrated into your purchasing operations in lockstep so that you can make the most of the information that you get. And so if you want to quantify this, what is the business impact that we can expect here? From turning one-off transactions into repeat customers, the average Recurrency customer can add 12.9% of revenue acceleration. So if the company is, on its own growing, let's say it's on its own growing 10%, the sales reps that are using Recurrency are growing their territories 22.9% on average. This will improve the median performance across the entire team. Part of the value here is for new sales reps who are unfamiliar with customers and unfamiliar with items. You can train them up significantly faster. And it's an opportunity to make the most of every shot on goal that you have. When it comes to turning inbound teams into profit centers with upselling, a great benchmark is that 1 out of every 5 upsell pitches should resonate and convert. And so if you're doing 100,000 orders a year, 1 in 5 would be 20,000 upsells a year successfully completed. And if the average value of a line item in your business is, $100, that's $2 million of marginal revenue added by just training your team to ask the simple question, would you like fries with that? Would you like gloves with that? On forecasting, Recurrency, we have something we call the $1 million challenge, where we do automated back testing, where if you're interested in looking into how Recurrency can help your business, we can send you a single SQL query for Profit 21 that will pull not only your historical sales data, but it will also pull your historical forecast that you use to make purchases. And we will essentially withhold some of that data and say, look at all of the data up until June 2022. And then we will predict, July, August, September 2022, and give you forecasts of what your forecast would have been had you been using Recurrency. And from there, we'll compare it with the forecast that you did use and see who is more accurate. And we call this the $1 million challenge, because the improvement in accuracy that Recurrency can drive can free up over $1 million of net working capital for almost everyone we talk to. For very small businesses, it's $1 million a year. For slightly larger businesses, it's $1 million a quarter. For slightly larger businesses, we've even seen $1 million a month of net working capital freed up by more accurate forecasting. And then if you perfect the purchasing process, if you have these granular, high visibility and very sensitive improvements in your min-maxes and your purchasing parameters, you can see between 1/2 and 2 inventory turns added to the business purely by reducing capital invested in inventory and by increasing your fill rate on orders by never going out of stock. And so if you look for the average distributor, these are all desirable outcomes. If people really want to pursue them, what are the options, right? In short, you can do nothing. You can build them or you can buy them. Doing nothing is doing nothing. And you should not expect any of these results if you do nothing. Building it requires massive investment. If you look at Grainger, again, 253 open job requisitions for these types of roles that invest in these types of activities. And the last option, 253, and the last option is you can hit the easy button and buy it. In many ways, this is Recurrency. This is what I built for my family business, and this is what I brought to market to share with everyone on this call and everyone in this ecosystem. Because ultimately, if there are opportunities to use these critical tools at a moment of intense change in a way that is so seamlessly integrated with Profit 21 that you can literally roll it out in 30 minutes, it's really an opportunity for businesses to get ahead. And so for us, Recurrency, we have 2 main products. We have a sales product. We have a purchasing product. You saw little demos of them today, though there's much more to see. And again, we're fully integrated with Profit 21. We have a bidirectional sync that takes literally 30 minutes to set up. And on top of all of that, we have what we call the ROI back tests, where if you're even just curious and you say, wow, these are interesting ideas, but I wonder if they'd even work for us. We can integrate it into your essentially engagement process with Recurrency. We can give you these single SQL queries to run against your ERP, to pull out all of the data and give you the comparison. If you had used Recurrency upselling and you saw the average conversion rate of all of our customers, how much revenue would it have added? If you look at your historical sales data, How many of your customers are actually opportunities customers, where they have these recurring purchase patterns that you can predict? If you look at your forecasting, what's the improvement in forecast accuracy we can drive? These are all questions that we'll answer. We can answer just totally free as part of these ROI backtests. As I said, here we go. Custom business backtest analysis, quantify missed sales opportunities, generate an actual forecast, analyze inventory savings, turn rates, and fill rates. And so ultimately, that's recurrency. I'm happy to take questions now. I thank you all for your time. Many of you, I know recurrency is on the younger side out of the ERP ecosystem. Many of the people presenting today have been around 10 or 20 years. Recurrency has been around 4 or 5. But we've been in development for quite a while. We're a team of 45 people, fully remote, and we'd love to have an opportunity to show you more about our product, our business, and how the technology that we've developed here can help your business operate better. And with that, Brad, I think we're going to questions.
Awesome, thanks, Sam. You no better person to share how it works than the person who built it, right? And obviously, you believe in it. That's really cool. I didn't know all that about you until today, other than you have really cool headphones. All right, so I do have a couple of questions that have come in. So lead times are a huge variable with purchasing, and they change constantly. What is the best way to rapidly update purchase part lead times, and how do the forecasting algorithms adjust to the lead time changes?
Absolutely. This is an incredible question. So with lead times, in Profit 21, lead times are calculated purely based off of historical, right? You're looking at an average, and there are a couple of problems there. So first, there are huge outliers that you technically can mark as outliers, but very often are not marked as an outlier. And so you have these single outliers that were influencing these huge swings in your measured lead time. And second, the way P21 works is it weights all of the lead time observations equally. So if you have one from 3 years ago, it counts just as much as one from yesterday. There's also the problem that it only looks at a very small subset. If you're looking at a particular item, right, it'll give you that item's lead time, but not the overall vendor's lead time. And so the first step of really getting through the haze of lead time variability is you need to be forecasting lead times the same way you forecast demand. And there are all of these improvements that you can add to lead times. This is something that we've built into our product. We call it smart lead times, where we weight differently based on when the lead time happened, where we weight differently based on what different items were on the same PO. We include data from the vendor that might not be reflected in the P21 system lead time, where we actually automatically exclude outliers if we have data to suggest that they're not going to happen again. Where you look at sort of a broader set of data to help make a prediction rather than just a measurement. And if you look at Recurrency's customers, this smart lead time feature, the average lead time error when a PO is placed across all of our customers is around 32 days, which is absurd when you think about it. It means the average error that when I place this PO, I thought I'd get it on this date, I actually got it 32 days later on average, right? Or that's the absolute, so maybe it's 32 days later or 32 days earlier, but 32 days is the average error. It's absurd. With smart lead times, we're able to cut this down to below 20. We're able to cut it in half from 4 weeks to 2 weeks. And this is a measurable difference for many of our customers, because that 2 weeks of inventory, right, that for most of our customers, that would answer the $1 million challenge of where to free up net working capital. And so the question of what is the best way to cut through the haze of lead time variability is you really need to be looking at this broader set of data. You need to be weighting that data very appropriately to help make a lead time forecast rather than a lead time measurement. I hope that answers the question.
Awesome. All right, next question. You have both sales and purchasing automation. Do you sell these capabilities as separate modules? If so, which modules do you see being used by Epicor customer base most often?
Yep. So we introduced our sales product first. The first thing we ever built was the opportunities feature. And so, the vast majority of our customers are on our sales product because we've been selling it for multiple years. That said, we do have customers that just exclusively use purchasing. We have customers who use both. Do we sell them as multiple modules? Like most distributors, I think the way to think about Recurrency is you really got to look at our background, which is I grew up in wholesale distribution and I dealt with many of the technology vendors that are on this call today. I dealt with many of the technology vendors that are in the user group and come to the conferences on behalf of my family business. And ultimately, I came away from that experience just wanting to build the most distribution-friendly technology business that was out there, right? I wanted to build the type of technology partner that I wish my family business had. And so like many distribution businesses, we just want to be easy to do business with. We'll sell them both together, we'll sell them individually. But ultimately, we don't want to have some, really, arcane packaging structure that, forces distributors to make this choice or that, right? We just want to meet businesses. We want to, really deeply understand their core problems and then try and be really helpful technology partners in explaining how our technology can help solve them. And then ultimately package it in such a way that is easy to do business with.
Awesome. All right. Has your software had to change according to new dynamics since the pandemic?
So actually, many of the things that we were talking about before the pandemic, about having robustness and not just efficiency, and a lot of the core product principles we've been doing actually fared quite well during COVID. Because if you're doing look at lead times, if you're doing a lead time measurement, right? Lead time measurements, they are very slow to react to new data, right? If you are waiting data 3 years ago, the same as data from yesterday, that's a very slow to react lead time measurement. But if you are then forecasting a lead time, you can very quickly update and react to new information as it comes. Really, the trick with most technology products with business intelligence or artificial intelligence is just using the data that customers are already giving you to improve their experience. And if you really are making predictions from data rather than just measurements, it tends to react to changes much quicker. And so there are, these very, very robust features that, if another pandemic hit, God forbid, it would fare, quite exceptionally well, would be our estimation.
All right. Does Recurrence connect to the P21 application the same, whether it's deployed locally or on the cloud?
Great question. So if you are on local, we will connect via the scheduled import service manager. If you have the transaction API, there's enhanced functionality we can deliver if we can get access to the transaction API. If you have the interactive API, same thing, we'll connect with the interactive API. If you're in the cloud, we connect through the cloud API directly. But that said, there's no real difference in functionality, whether you are on-prem or on the cloud.
All right, thanks. So another one, what areas of the P21 database get updated when you push in a forecast?
When we push in a forecast. So we actually don't push in forecasts.
Okay.
What we push in today are updates to the, it's actually on the item master, which is the mins and the maxes. We will very granularly update the mins and the maxes that are then pulled by Porg and run in the Porg process. So the forecasts, because the forecasts that we're using are very, very detailed. They have all of these ancillary data pieces attached. There'd actually be a loss of precision if we had to push it into P21. And so we don't push forecasts into P21. They just live in Recurrency, although you can download them to Excel if you'd like. But we push into P21 the mins and the maxes.
All right, thank you much. All right, another one. Did the tool set have to change as a function of the change from the 2-tier desktop database architecture to the 3-tier web client middleware database architecture?
No.
Okay, easy enough.
No, it did not.
No, no is a full sentence in this case. All right, so I think that's all the questions that we have right now, unless we have any others that want to throw some in. I know we have a little bit of time left. Otherwise, if we don't have, we'll just hang on here for like 30 more seconds. If no other ones get tossed in, I'll give you guys a little bit of your time back. Is there anything else you want to say about Recurrency? I mean, you did a great job kind of covering all the bases, but if there's anything else you wanted to throw in there.
Sure.
Shine.
We have 20 minutes left, so I'll add something in. I think the last message I'll leave with is that here at Recurrency, we are just exceptionally passionate about distribution, right? I grew up in distribution. Everyone on our team loves distribution. Literally the first thing that we do when we onboard a new employee is we send them to the family business and we go and get them trained. And so we built this really incredible team of just very high, high empathy for the distribution use case people. And I think if you come and interact with the company, you'll love our customer service. Again, that idea of wanting to be cut from a different cloth and being the kind of technology vendor that I wish my family business has had, that really permeates everything we do. And so a lot of our customers, if they need a change in the product, if they need a customization or a new configuration, we'll deploy engineers directly, sort of free of charge, just on the house to be helpful and really go out of our way. Many customers have core values. Our number one core value is create wildly successful customers. And so if you thought this presentation was interesting, if you are caught by the idea of an ROI backtest, give us a ring. Our website, recurrency.com. My email is sam@recurrency.com. And I'd love to show you what we're talking about and see if there's an opportunity to help use new technology to leverage the change in the ecosystem to improve your customers' experiences and ultimately help you all be better businesses and grow to your maximum potential.